Okay, so thank you everyone. This is going to be a very, very big detour from the talks we've had so far. This is going to be a lot more on the math side. So we're going to have a look at how we can quantify luck in terms of player statistics in Apex Legends. Considering this is my first time presenting at any academic conference, it's a bit of a who am I? My name is Callum. I am a broadcast producer. I operate a company called One Take Media Group, and we produce bespoke solutions for localization of esports events, working with companies like Blast currently to produce mainly their Japanese catalog, since that is where I mainly specialize. I graduated from the University of Staffordshire this year from our London campus, the esports bachelor's, and I currently operate out of London and also Sendai, Japan. But that's not about me. So, first off, I'm extremely jet lagged, so I'm very sorry in advance if I end up stammering a lot or anything like that. That's what happens when you travel for 40 hours from Japan. But, so, one of the issues which I find when looking at the Battle Royale genre in recent years is that it's very hard to get into as a spectator who knows nothing about the game. Viewership retention has considerably fallen for the Battle Royale genre in recent years, and part of that is to not really understanding not only the game itself, but also the underlying metrics which quantify most of the data in the game. Most of the time you're looking at statistics like your KD, damage output, and things like that. But there's something much deeper to that, because in the Battle Royale genre, you need to account for many aspects which are luck-based. You don't drop in the map with a specific class that you produced. You see what weapons you find from loot crates as soon as you land. And there has never been a real way to quantify this. There's never been a way to say, well, this player has had awful luck when they've spawned in. How does this affect their overall game performance? And that's something which I sought to change. So, one thing I found from the very small bit of qualitative research I did before beginning this project was most first-time Battle Royale watchers often feel out of touch, because if you don't know the genre, it's very hard to understand what good player performances look like, whether it be pure mechanical skill or adapting to ever-changing situations. So what I wanted to do is, first, I started looking at two main factors in, well, the main areas of luck which we can quantify, specifically in Apex. And the reason why specifically I chose Apex is because across 2022 and 2023, I worked for the ALGS broadcast and also league operations, so I feel like I have a bit more of a detailed working of the game itself and also many of the other factors that go on specifically for players when I was a referee. So, loot spawning is the first main thing which we think about when we think about luck in the Battle Royale genre. There will be many times that you land in, whether it be Fortnite, Apex, or any other game, you get no weapons as soon as you land, and you end up bottom of the leaderboard. You die instantly. But sometimes you spawn in and you have an amazing run, whether you find specific weapons or equipment, which will benefit you throughout the game. When you look at a simple KD record, you never really get the full picture in the Battle Royale genre, because there are too many factors which you can't explain just with a number. And another issue, well, another factor based on luck is circle generation. So, as you all know, in the Battle Royale genre, randomly generated zones will be produced, which will close down the game area slowly as it goes along. And that is something which is usually randomly generated at the start of each game, particularly in the ALGS, because they use different algorithms for producing randomized zone generation. And we'll talk about that very shortly. So, to do this, we first need to talk about an algorithm which I produced. So, looking back over the last year and a half of ALGS data, I was able to produce an algorithm which, given any particular game state across the thousands of games which I used as a training base for this model, how can you predict any outcome of a game state based on a player's particular luck? How can you quantify and come up with a way to express the overall performance of a player who has had very poor luck and is maybe overperforming, or has had very bad luck and has managed to turn it around because of their overall skill? These are things which we can't quantify with the metrics that we currently have in the BR genre. And the algorithm that I've produced, which we'll start to talk about in a bit, is one of, in my opinion, the keys to opening that up. So, what I initially did, I used the previous 2 ALGS seasons as my training base, going through every single game, training my model in order to sorry, in order to produce this model. And from that, through my own testing and through game states which I've recorded in my own games, I've used as a basis to test this model. And currently, we are looking at around 87% accuracy. When you open your first three crates when you spawn, looking at your specific loot drops, to an 87% degree of accuracy, you can predict the overall outcome between 1 to 2 places of where you actually finish. Now, this is a project that I've only been working on for about 6 to 9 months. This was supplementary to my undergraduate dissertation, and over time, not only will this model get better, but as we get a larger training base and I come up with faster methods to train this model, then there will be so much more that we can do, whether it be real-time updates for bookmakers or real-time updates of statistics for production to give players a better insight of what is happening exactly in the moment. Not only providing first-time or beginner viewers with a better insight to any given situation, but also enhancing the statistics which we already have to begin with. So there are the 2 real, well, the one real issue I see with this is currently I am somebody who is very much not in line with the current esports gambling market, and if this algorithm is to be refined further and further, it will open up a lot of doors for gambling opportunities. And if an individual were to use this algorithm, then that could cause many issues. And this is why, for the time being, until this paper is fully published, I will not be sharing any information about the algorithm itself and its workings. But after this, if you would like to speak to me, I'll be happy to give greater explanation. But for the time being, unfortunately, without access to many of the APIs used in the competitive scene for data generation, I've had to rely on very intensive optical character recognition going across so many games. It took me about 6 months so far going through every single player's POV for every single game. So you're talking about hundreds of different POVs per individual game, and that adds up over hundreds to nearly thousands of games per season. So we're only just at the beginning of what this algorithm could do. So, use case of this algorithm, realistically, this algorithm would most likely be used by bookmakers rather than the individual gambler, because I only really see catastrophic consequences if that were to happen. But real-time representation of this data will give more accurate representations of instant odds for any real-time odds for pretty much any gambling site who would be able to make use of this. Now, my main point as a broadcast producer and as somebody who is focused on the spectator experience in a broadcast is using this as a representation of player performance in real time. So currently, this algorithm is not fully optimized. We're looking at, in real time, about 25% of real time is what we're getting in terms of the real-time generation, and that's mainly because I am very much hardware bottlenecked without a partner currently, and eventually over time where we refine this and partner up with companies who have much more computer hardware potential than that I do personally, we will get much better results over time. So my limitations, as I was saying, computing power and access to the APIs which the ALGS currently use to gather their data for spectators. With access to this, we could get up to 90% of real time without any further training. And that is something which is absolutely incredible. Not only if you take it by the bookmaker's perspective, but also in the production perspective, because that is going to do absolute wonders for a spectator experience or for real-time odds. Now, so currently, you've seen that probably circle generation is one of the real drawbacks that I've had, because I do not have the computing power currently to factor in randomized circle generation for this model currently, and that is the real big next step. And I'm limited by the computing power that I have available to me as an individual currently. So realistically, when we get information for circle generation, then we are going to get much more accurate information far above the 90% threshold which I currently have. And as a factor of this, we have a long ways to go. This is definitely in its infancy, but this is the beginning of what we can see over the next few years for new metrics which we can use in the Battle Royale genre. And this doesn't have to stay in the Battle Royale genre. So many different esports genres have their own factors of luck. Whether it be spawns in a traditional respawn FPS like Halo or Call of Duty, or pretty much anything. Every game has some random aspect to some degree. And eventually, that will cause a change to the outcome of any game state. And we can quantify that. Whether it be taking the time to train new models, but at the moment, localized in Apex, that is my main focus, as it's the game I have the most experience with, not only playing the game itself, but also working behind the scenes, not only in production, but in league operations. So player psychology is something that you could do with this, using this information of saying, this player has had a really, really poor game. How is this affecting a player's psyche? Now, much like Cameron, I hate qualitative research, so that's not for me. That's for somebody else to do, because, yeah, no thank you. But that's something that eventually, when that literature is produced, or we have a deeper insight into these metrics, then that's something that we can use for coaching, for example. We can use this to say, well, how are players reacting in any of these situations? If they have had poor luck, how is this affecting their overall game performance? Not only for another game, but for the rest of a series, for example. Now, that is everything on the slides because I wrote these on the plane, but the future for the algorithms I've discussed today are massive, and without further partnership, I am quite bottlenecked. So over the next sort of year or so, I'm looking to expand the scope of what we can do here, not only with further computing power with strategic partners, but also figuring out how this can be expanded to not only the wider VR genre, but also esports in general, to provide better statistics for viewership or for gambling. And with that, I'm sure there are many more possibilities that you all could think of about what we can do with this, but that is something that we can go through in future because this is very much in its infancy, and this is not something that's probably going to be publishable for a long while, but
it will be published, don't worry.
At some point.
We can talk about this. Just to give you some context, this is Callum's undergraduate dissertation. And the model does work. It broke my PC, but it works. Somebody has to test it out.
Yeah, I'm also going to publicly apologise to Cameron because I'm sure that was a nightmare to mark. But you know what?
Do you know what? It was nice. I finally got to use my mathematics degree.
At least you've used it for something.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So that's pretty much everything from me. I'm going to open it up to some questions. Thank you all very much, and I greatly appreciate you listening. Thank you.
I've got a quick one.
Yes.
Do you need the circle generation part of it to act in the same way? Because there's only a limited number of circles, you know,
Yes.
process of elimination. Shouldn't that be an easier mathematical model to implement?
So yes, that would be an easier model to implement. However, over 2025, from what I've heard from people working in the ALGS, the circle generation model for competitive play seems to be changing. I'm not sure how that looks currently, but I need to be open to see how this changes in future to make sure that we're not bottlenecking ourselves instantly, because this is something that's going to take probably a year or two to fully flesh out. I would like to first see what the future of those algorithms hold, because currently, that's right, it's very much something you can reverse engineer from any two circles, right?
The seed.
Exactly, right. And players can now do that on the fly. So it's the impact on players individually is definitely reduced now that you can start to look ahead depending on these circles. But depending on how that changes in future, I definitely think that there is more opportunity for these models to be used. We just have to see how that unfolds with the new generation methods.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other?
Yes.
Since the model is close to 90% accurate,
Yes.
is the other 10% like, is it like very big variations or?
So at the moment, that is the one thing that's stopping us from getting to that sort of 100%. So that, and also just, frankly, the size and scale of trading data that I currently have. Obviously, the only thing I have right now is data from the ALGS, because that is the only way that I get every single player perspective at any given time. But obviously, as we start to get more and more detailed, these are going to change every patch, and we need to come up with new methods in either to augment the data we already have to fit upcoming or current patches, but or also to make sure that the previous iterations of the model can stay relevant and continue to be updated. That's something which is something I'm trying to figure out at the moment, but I definitely need more time to do it whilst fleshing this out further.
Just because I made a bit of a mistake, which is not a new thing, but the last talk will be moved to the first part of